Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Patton with the Disabilities Commission for the City of Boston. The public meeting law requires that I let you know that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast on Boston City TV. It is being recorded by the City of Boston Cable Office of Communications and is being broadcast on Xfinity Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and FiOS Channel 962. With that, I will hand it over to our board chair, Wesley Ireland.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Good evening, one and all. I will call this meeting to order. And we will start off with introductions. I guess I can go ahead and go first. My name is Wes Ireland, and I am using American Sign Language, and I have 2 female sign language interpreters who will be translating my comments into English. I am male, though, even though you'll be hearing female voices. I live in the North End. And I would like to ask Paulette to introduce yourself next, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paulette Jarrett. I live in the Mattapan section of Massachusetts, of Boston.
This is Wes. Thank you, Paulette. Zari.
Hi, my name is Zari. I'm Elseni. I'm the member of the board. I live in South Boston. And that's it.
Thank you, Zari. Next, we'll call on Olivia.
My name is Olivia Richard. I am a member of the board and I live in Brighton.
Thanks, Olivia. How about Paul? Go ahead, Paul.
Hi, my name is Paul Karen. I serve as the secretary of the board. I work at the Boston Planning and Development Agency and also a vested member of Laborers Local 151. I live in the West End, Beacon Hill area. I serve as an advocate for mental illness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Jerry.
Yes, hi, my name is Jerry Boyd, and I'm proud to serve as a member of the board, and I live in West Roxbury.
Great, thank you very much. Can we have Elizabeth, please?
Yes. Hello, I'm Elizabeth Jean Clower. I'm a board member, and I live in Back Bay.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Let me see if I missed anybody. Carl, can we have you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Carl Richardson. I am I consider myself deafblind in that I'm hard of hearing and blind, and have a dual sensory loss, and I live in Brighton Center.
Thank you, Carl. Juan Carlos.
Everyone, this is Juan Carlos Ramirez, advisory board member, and I live in Boston South End.
Thanks, Juan Carlos. I believe that is all of the board members with us this evening that I see in the meeting. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Jerry, I see your hand is raised. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, this is Jerry. I just thought, I thought I saw Charles's name on here, but maybe it's not him.
Oh, no. Charlie is not on the meeting. He already confirmed that he was not able to join us tonight, so we weren't expecting him.
Oh, okay, and then that's another person, yeah, they're going by Charles, so I thought Charlie might be Charles, so, my fault, thank you.
Not at all. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think I got everybody. And I don't think that Charles is Charlie, so I think we're good to go. Okay, so we can continue with the agenda, which will include the approval of minutes from our last meeting in January. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the minutes from January? Before we, board members, go ahead and make a motion to approve those minutes. Okay. Can I get someone to make a motion, please?
This is Carl. I make a motion to approve the January minutes.
Thank you, Carl.
This is Zariel, second.
Thank you, Zari. All in favor, please raise your hands or say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I meant to say aye, I was muted, sorry. It's Jerry again.
No problem, Jerry. Thank you. Okay, none opposed. We have a unanimous aye, so the motion passes to approve the minutes as written from the January meeting. Next item on our agenda is the board election of officers. I have a script that I'm required to follow for this process. So let me just explain the script first of all, and then we'll go ahead with the board elections. We will have, the vacancies are board chair, board vice chair, board secretary, and board treasurer. Any member can nominate a specific person for any of the vacant positions. And then I, as the chair, the current chair, I'm supposed to ask the person first if they accept the nomination. And then that person can answer yes or no, yay or nay. And then as chair, I will ask if there are further nominations from the floor, well, the online floor. And I'm supposed to ask that question 3 times. Once we've asked that question 3 times, someone needs to make a motion to vote, to close the nominations and vote. And then another member has to second the motion to close the nomination and vote. And then as chair, I will ask the question, all in favor, all opposed, and then we'll get our results. That's how the process is going to work. So I will help guide it because I have these guiding questions in the script. So for board chair, what nominations do we have?
I nominate Wesley Ireland for the chair.
Okay.
This is Carl.
That's myself at the point if I accept the nomination.
I have a quick question before we proceed.
Yeah, this is Wes. As the board chair, I'm supposed to ask the nominee whether they accept the nomination. So in this case, I'm asking myself, and I do accept the nomination.
Well, this is Carl. I have a question about that. Typically, most boards that I belong to, the chair of the board runs the election. For the vice chair, the treasurer, and the secretary, and then the vice chair will run the election for the chair of the board, because the chair of the board can't run his own elections.
This is Wes. Thank you for that, Carl. So we have our current vice chair. Ducey is not with us tonight. So I would ask Paul to take her place for this evening as the secretary and take the lead for the nominations for board chair.
So should I continue?
Well, first, the chair has to oversee the other 3 elections, and we have to be nominated before Paul can oversee Wes's election.
This is Wes, okay.
This is Paul. So are we not nominating Wes at the forefront here, or?
This is Andrea. If I can suggest, because a nomination has been made for Wes, why don't we continue with that if you're up for it, Paul? And then
Sure.
Wes
Yeah,
can
fine.
do the rest?
Okay, I nominate Leslie Ireland, the chair of the Commission Disability Executive Committee, Advisory Board, City of Boston. Does anyone second the nomination?
This is Carl, I second.
All those in favor of Wes being our chairman? Say aye.
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 Anyone not in favor of Wesley Ireland being the chairman?
I am in favor, but I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Jerry. Forgive me about the process, but don't we nominate and then isn't it supposed to, don't we open up the floor for any discussion or whatnot before we take the vote? Was that not correct? Did I hear that incorrectly at the beginning?
This is Wes. Thank you, Jerry. I would just like to qualify. Paul is supposed to ask the floor if there are any other nominations.
There we go. Yeah.
That vote for me. So he has to ask that question 3 times. That's right.
This is
But
Paul.
otherwise-
Is there any other nominations for chairman of the Commission on Disability Advisory Board for the City of Boston? Any other nominations
For chair.
for chairman or chairperson? No?
So I move that,
Seeing we, Go ahead.
this is Carl, I move that we close the nomination by unanimous acclamation
okay.
and vote.
So we'll go over the vote again. All those in favor of Wesley Ireland for chairman, please say aye.
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 All those not in favor, nay. Wesley Ireland is re-elected the chairman of the Commission on Disabilities Advisory Board Executive Committee.
This is Wes. Thank you to Paul. Thank you to all of you. Okay.
Okay?
So now, so now for the vice chair. All right, so now for vice chair, bear with me one second. Oh, sorry, guys. Any members make a nomination for vice chair?
Yes, I nominate Lucia Lagos Wachaya. I'm sorry, I butchered her last name. Lucia for the vice chair of the executive committee.
This is Carl, I
Second.
second.
This is Paul, I also second.
This is Wes. Hold on just 1 second. The next step is that I, as chair, need to ask Ducia, sorry about the pronunciation, if she accepts the nomination. And unfortunately, she is not with us this evening. She's not here, at least yet, in the meeting. Just got an email from her that there was a fire alarm, smoke alarm situation in her building. And she was supposed to join us by telephone, but we haven't seen her yet. So we need to ask her, as a part of the scripted process, whether she accepts the nomination. But she's not here, so I'm not sure exactly how to proceed.
This is Andrea. If we expect her later in the evening, we could potentially hold on voting for this particular position and come back to it at the end. You can also open the floor for other nominations, of course, but if there are no other nominations, we can hold that election later tonight or next month.
Susan Elizabeth, I just have a point of order question. When the names were submitted last month, knowing that there would be an additional month, was the that prior agreement doesn't count, right? It has to be, the only way that that's acceptable is if she said no for this meeting. Is that a correct understanding? In other words, last month there was a slate of officers presented to us with the possibility of additional names. And although someone could change their mind, or at least those names, my understanding at the time was when those names were submitted, it was with acknowledgement, but that's just a point of order question.
Right, I don't think we have a good answer because I don't know. Robert's rules of order, as I've studied them, don't get quite that detailed. That's why, again, personally, I would propose we can hold. Hopefully her fire alarm will be handled at her apartment and we can do it later with her. Yeah, unless the board wants to take prior assent to continue in the position as assent. I'm not worried either way, but.
No, I'm not either. Yeah. But to let Wes, I'll defer to you.
This is Wes. I would like to see if there are any other nominations from the floor. Let's go to that part of the script.
I go ahead with the treasurer. I would like to nominate Carl Richardson for the treasurer.
I second the nomination of Carl Richardson for treasurer. This is Paul.
Are there other nominations from the floor for treasurer? Are there other nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations from the floor? I have to recite that 3 times, and then we can move to close the nominations and vote on Carl.
Wes, excuse me, this is Jerry. I just have again, I'm sorry for my confusion, but did we officially decide that we will hold the vote and the nomination for vice chair until either Ducia arrives this evening or next month?
Yes, I was a little confused as well because we got ahead of ourselves. So
I think we should settle that
I
before we move
think that I
forward.
would like to recommend we put elections on hold.
Hi again, this is Andrea. There were no other nominations for vice chairs. There's really nothing we can do on that role, but we could move forward on the others. There's no reason not to, so that is the discretion of the chair.
Yeah, and this is Jerry again. I wasn't suggesting that we hold the entire process back, but you know, just wondering, you know, if you felt comfortable moving forward without voting for vice chair. It's certainly, you know, it's certainly within your purview, Wes, to want to vote on the entire slate together, but you know, I don't, like
Yeah,
Andrea said, I don't see any need to do that.
I'm going to recommend that we continue with the elections for treasurer and secretary and put the vice chair on hold.
Great, thanks for clarifying.
Garcia, to ensure that she can confirm acceptance.
No, I'm gonna repeat.
I've already asked if there were other nominations for treasurer. I need a motion for Carl as treasurer.
I move to vote on the Carl election of treasurer.
I second it.
All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Congratulations, Carl.
I just hope I can handle the massive budget.
Okay, moving on to the last.
The last nomination for secretaries.
I nominate Paul Karen for the secretary.
I second it.
This is Carl, I second that as well.
I accept the nomination.
Are there any other nominations from the floor? Before I ask that question, I apologize. Paul, do you accept the position that you've been nominated for?
Yes, I accept it, and thank you.
Okay. For the second time, are there any nominations in addition from the floor? And the third announcement, are there any additional nominations from the floor?
This is Carl. I move that we close the nomination process by unanimous acclamation. Or consent.
This is Jerry, I second that.
All in favor of Paul as secretary, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you for accepting that position.
Good job, Wes.
Andrea, is Ducia online? If you see her, could you let me know? So we can determine within the time remaining for the meeting if we'll wait for the next meeting for the vote. I would like to get this over with if we can.
Yep, this is Andrea. I will keep an eye out and will alert you/the group if and when she arrives.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the chair's report. My report is short. There was one news article and 2 events that I would like to highlight. Carl Richardson was in the news again. WGBH, our local public radio station, published an article about guide dogs, and they're facing ongoing discrimination with rideshare and travel agencies. Unfortunately, this is increasing due to people trying to pass their dogs off as service and emotional support animals. We see this issue in Massachusetts. They've introduced legislation to increase the fines for people who misrepresent emotional support animals and service dogs or service animals. That said, I'm hoping to have the canine companions at our next meeting to provide a presentation. Canine Companions is a national organization that highlights and trains highly competent service dogs for adults and children with disabilities. They have a local office in Boston. And on another note, the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind will be working with the MBTA for a virtual town hall meeting on mobility, on the new Mobility Center. And that is from 11 to 12:30 on March 10th. There are some other up-and-coming events that are of interest. The Massachusetts Historical Society will be hosting an event online teaching the U.S. disability rights movement. They will host 2 virtual events. I put the website for you all in the chat. February 28th, Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Disability and the American Past. An Introduction to Disability Justice. That will happen again on Monday, March 6th from 6 to 7, focusing on disability activism in Massachusetts and nationwide. If you're interested in joining, I've posted the link to those events in the chat. I encourage board members to participate in those events. It would be nice to know what's going on and what has happened historically in the past for us to be able to advocate for the Boston disability community. There's another event that I'd like to highlight that's happening locally. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum will host an event. There's a presentation on the larger landscape It's a conversation on the design of disability events, and that is March 9th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And that's on-site in person. I'm going to post the web link in the chat if you're looking for more information on that event. One of the speakers used to be on the commission for the mayor's office for people with disabilities in New York City. For Bloomberg and de Blasio's administration. That is my report as chair. Do you have any other questions? Victor Calise is one of the speakers.
This is Andrea. If you'll allow me, Wes, I'll just say that I'm planning to be there. I think we've told you all before that our office hosts a monthly call with other commissioners from around the country, and Victor used to be on that call when he was with the New York City mayor's office. So I've never met him in person. I'm looking forward to going. So if anyone wants to join, I'll be there.
Thank you for sharing that, Andrea. The next item on the agenda the Commissioner's report. Commissioner McCosh.
Thanks, Wes. Good evening, everybody. Andrea will be sharing my slides. And yes, just a note on the event at the Isabella Stewart Gardner. I also registered. I'm looking forward to seeing Victor. He's a good friend. And I think it sounds like a wonderful event. So thanks for bringing that up, Wes. Okay, my report tonight is pretty brief. So we'll go to the next slide. Just some updates for everybody. The closed caption ordinance implementation is underway. We have seen captions in many restaurants and bars, and we're getting good reports that people are paying attention to the ordinance. Just today, we have a link on our webpage with a button that says closed caption requirements for businesses. So if anyone has questions, we can direct them to this link on our webpage. We're also in the process of getting together a mass mailing and an email blast, which will include outreach materials such as instructions for how to enable the closed captions, FAQs, city departments that are involved, and contact information for questions. And then the link to our dedicated closed captions information webpage through our website. So if anyone, we haven't received any complaints from the public or from businesses. So we're excited about that. And also the monthly call that Andrea mentioned that we do with different disability commissions throughout the country. LA is really excited about this ordinance, and they are pursuing it in their city. San Francisco already has an ordinance like this, so we got an update on their program today. And a couple of other cities are also looking at it. So I think there's some momentum spreading. And we're really excited, and thank Wes for helping pave the way to make this more prevalent throughout the country. Next update is the Boston resident listing. The 2023 annual city census is now open. Every Boston resident is expected to complete the annual census every year. You can complete it online, by mail, or by calling the elections department. The annual city census provides information for the fair planning and distribution of city services. It helps the city figure out who lives where, by age, by demographic, so that we can be equitable when we plan for services. The information collected helps maintain an accurate and up-to-date list of registered voters. So if you fill out the census, the next time you go to vote, you'll already be listed as a registered voter. Filling out the census doesn't register you to vote, but if you're already registered, it will keep you listed as an active voter. So that's important. And there's also an optional disability survey that you can fill out through this link. And we'll send the slides around after the meeting, so you can just click on these links. Next slide. Just a recap of some events that we have coming up this year. In January, we had the Boston Public Schools Green New Deal listening sessions, and I want to thank anyone who participated. I know a few members of the community who aren't on the board joined us, and they gave some really good feedback to Boston Public Schools. February, we are in the midst of tax season, so we have the free tax prep for people who are deaf, and also a pilot tax day for people who are blind and low vision. In April, we'll be kicking off our Boston Breaks Bike Outreach campaign, so stay tuned for a date to come celebrate the kickoff with us. In May, we'll hold our annual Disability Community Forum. June, we will be doing work with the Boston Public Schools special education students, financial empowerment banking event where they come out to City Hall and they get to meet representatives from different banks and learn about banking products. And we give them seed money to open up an account, savings or checking or money market, whatever fits their needs. July 18th will be our 13th annual ADA Day celebration on City Hall Plaza. In September, we'll be doing our Civic Engagement Day again to learn ways to get involved with local government. And then October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and we will be doing our Disability Mentoring Day and our Pathways to Employment and Public Service program. Next slide. Then just, again, this was on here last month, but just to remind everybody, for your own information, the state ethics training by the Inspector General. Since you're all considered special employees of the city, you can go to this training to learn about ethics, conflict of interest. There is a small fee, but you can be reimbursed by us. Several sessions will be coming up in 2023. And then I just listed the board meeting schedule again for the year. And next slide. And then just a wrap up of some of the questions that we had from last month. I know that we held a special board meeting with the Mass Office on Disability to clarify the different role of the commission office and the advisory board. We don't have any updates for this month's meeting, but the city's law department is going to prepare a memo with their analysis of the enabling legislation, the city ordinance, and the state Chapter 48J, which establishes advisory boards. So we hope to have more information on that next month. But just to reiterate what we went over in the special meeting, that the board has 4 main responsibilities: to advise and assist municipal officials in ensuring compliance with disability laws, to review policies and activities of municipal departments as they affect people with disabilities, to provide information, referral, advocacy, and technical assistance to individuals, businesses, and organizations, and to coordinate activities of other local groups to meet the needs of people with disabilities. So I know that you all do a great job on those, but just wanted to kind of summarize it, what the main responsibilities are. And then just talking about the requirements of the board, which are to hold annual elections, which we know we're in the middle of, and to let everyone know that all members are eligible to serve on a committee and to run for office. Next slide. And I did just want to put this slide in here. I don't know if all of you heard, but Gerard Plant passed away last week. He was a longtime advocate from Newton. He was on the Newton Disability Commission, and he was also part of the CODA group, the Commission on Disability Alliance, that meets monthly, the local Boston area disability commission. So I've known Gerard for a long time, and he's a great advocate. And I know he was involved with the T and a lot of other advocacy work. So I just wanted to let everybody know, in case they hadn't heard, that Gerard passed away and that we'll miss him. And just wanted to pay respects to Gerard. And next slide. And that is it for my report this evening.
This is Wes. I guess I raised my hand to call on myself. I have a question, but why don't we go ahead? Sorry, Wes, this is Rachel. I missed. I have a question, but I saw Jerry has his hand raised. Let's have Jerry take the floor first.
Great, thanks, Wes. Commissioner, just to clarify, if you've already taken the state ethics training, you don't have to take it again, correct?
I believe it's every 2 years that we have to take it. So if you've already taken it within the last 2 years, you don't have to take it again.
I believe when I was last appointed, I took it right after that, so it may be slightly over that. I can look into taking it again, I guess. Thank you.
This is Wes. I'm going to go ahead and ask my question of the commissioner, and then I will call on you, Zeri. I see you, and then Elizabeth. My question is related, Commissioner, to the captioning ordinance. It's my understanding that there will be a mass mailing that goes out to businesses about this, and I wondered what might be included in that material that's sent out. And also when the mass mailing is planning, or excuse me, when is the plan to be sending out that mass mailing?
Sure, thanks for the question, Wes. So in the mass mailing, we'll have a list of FAQs, everything from why we passed this ordinance to how to enable captions. And we'll also have some technical assistance on how to enable them. And then some other a link to our webpage, which gives more information. And I know Andrea's been working with the other city departments, the small business office, on getting together contacts, business contacts. Andrew, do you have any updates on timeframes? I know we also had all the materials translated into different languages, and I think that's complete.
Yeah, so we have English, Spanish, Vietnamese, traditional and simplified Chinese characters. So part of the challenge is the only businesses that we have contact information for that we know have a TV are restaurants and bars. So they're the only ones who will get like a directed mailing. But as you all know, this covers banks and salons and hospitals even. So we unfortunately won't be able to direct mail to all of those since we don't have a list of which of those businesses have TVs. But that mailing will go out as soon as the person in the licensing department is back from jury duty, which I expect to be next Tuesday. So the person who actually hits send on the email and the mailing, once he's back from jury duty, that will go out.
This is Wes. Andrew, I appreciate it. Can I call on Elizabeth? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner, I remember when I had first moved to Boston and was attending the Disability Commission meetings, that even before I joined as a commission member, that you were saying one of the other, or maybe just at the time I had become a member of the board, you had indicated that the board can also hold hearings in the city. And I think in recent years with COVID and then, just a gradual returning to in-person gatherings, as well as the ability to still have that things can be virtual meetings. I just wanted to remind other board members that although it's encompassed in other things that the commissioner listed, advocacy and assistance in the community, that is a function that we can have if we choose to pursue that. And I don't know, perhaps not for tonight, but that I think might be something that it also, on a related note, would be prioritizing which issues in a given year the board views as particular specific priorities for that year, and the possibility of pursuing a hearing on that. So I just found that it is different than what's offered in some other disability advisory boards. So I just wanted to remind the board that is that there are through the commissioner's office and through the capabilities that are offered in Boston, that is an additional way that we can serve the community. Thanks.
Elizabeth, do you mean like city council hearings?
I don't know if that, when you said it to me, perhaps you can clarify for us what that does include, if it's in that forum or if there's any other forums. And I know your office, through your office, certainly we've been invited to attend ones that you've already have scheduled. But if you could elaborate then briefly what is meant by that. I do remember that you brought that to my attention.
Yeah, so really one of the city councilors, City Council President Ed Flynn, he's a disabled veteran, so he's very interested in all of our work. And when he was elected president, he had come to me and said that he wanted to know if we were interested in holding a hearing just to talk about disability issues in the city and accessibility. So we did have a dedicated hearing just on accessibility in Boston for people with disabilities. But certainly, yeah, any issues that the board wants to raise, we can work with the Intergovernmental Relations Office to hold a hearing. Similar to the captions ordinance, we had a hearing for that. If there are any issues, that's certainly a great advocacy tool. And one of our goals was to be working more closely with City Council, because when you raise an issue, and we bring it to the council, it really raises it citywide, so that not just the board is weighing in on it, but other people, other members of the public who are interested in such issues can also weigh in. And on that note, the City Council also does have a number of hearings that touch on different disability issues. And I know we pushed some of them out to the board. We may not push all of them out, but you can all sign up for like the City Council email that comes out every week, and we'll talk about different hearings they're having. Like I know they have a hearing coming up on mental health issues. There are a lot of hearings on special education in the Boston Public Schools. So yeah, that's a great point, Elizabeth. That's a great advocacy tool. So anything that the board is interested in, certainly we can discuss at the board meeting, and then Andrew and I can bring it back to our Intergovernmental Relations Office and work with City Council to hold a hearing. As far as the board holding hearings itself, I don't know if I've seen the term hearing anywhere in the legislation. I know that you can hold special meetings like we did last week, 2 weeks ago. But the hearings that I'm familiar with, I think, are related to City Council.
Okay, that's helpful too. But certainly you've touched on topics. It sounds like there's upcoming ones that would have relevance, so that's helpful to know. And are those ones that you'll bring to our attention, or you're recommending people sign up for on an individual basis for the newsletter?
Yeah, we can definitely bring them to your attention. I know a newsletter a few weeks ago listed like 4 or 5 disability hearings that were called for, but there weren't dates scheduled yet. So once we get the dates, we'll definitely send them out.
This is Wes. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for the questions. I will call on Olivia.
Yes, this is Olivia. I'm intrigued that Andrea mentions that the captions ordinance affects hospitals, because it's one of the things that we know is on the burner is accessibility within hospitals. And this is a chance to get back into that work for the board.
Yeah, Olivia, this would cover like lobbies, like waiting rooms, the public areas, not necessarily patient rooms or one-on-one communication with doctors. Because yeah, in theory, that's already covered by the ADA, and I know that's in new business to get some updates from Jerry on that, so. But yeah, lobbies and waiting rooms, those are places of public accommodation under the law, so they should have captions on.
This is fantastic. And
Olivia, just to follow up on that, I know Andrea said that the only lists we have of businesses are the ones with the, that have a license for the TV. But we can do a little research in our office. Like, we could send a letter to like the hospitals if we can get the right contact person, because I know there's a lot of hospitals in Boston, but still there's a finite number of them. So I'm sure we can identify the hospitals and get information to them about this, because that is a key piece, especially with being healthcare for people with disabilities. So, yep, that's a really good point.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information on those public-facing TVs as you enter that, you know, put on a mask, things like that.
And also, Wes, when you had asked what other information we're working on getting out, another thing we are still working on is the little pocket card for people to bring in to give to a business if they don't have the captions on. Just information about the ordinance and instructions on how to enable captions. So we're in the process of drafting that, and then we'll get it printed out, and then we'll be able to distribute it.
This is Wes. Great. I believe Zeri had her hand up before. Zeri, did you want to say something, question or comment?
About the caption, I would say that at Mass General, one of the things that we are trying to do is to encourage all outpatient clinics to have a little sticker on their TV in the waiting area that says, please leave caption on. And if they don't, if I'm rolling around and seeing a TV without a caption, I roll right in and say, do you have a remote? You know how to operate it without caption. So I think maybe one of the recommendations we can make is to have a little sticker put on any TV as a reminder, because one of the things is we have a lot of turnover as far as staff have, and people are not always aware that they should be doing it, but having a little reminder on the actual monitor would go a long way.
This is Wes. Thank you, Zeri. Thank you very much. It's a good suggestion. Are there any other questions or comments for the Commissioner about her report? Great. Thank you, Commissioner McCosh. Next item on our agenda. Let's just check 1 second. Okay, next on our agenda, we have the Architectural Access Report by Patricia Mendez.
Hi, Wes. This is Andrea. Patricia is unfortunately not here. The one thing she wanted me to share with you all was a reminder about the Advanced Community Access Monitor Training, ACAM, ACAM. Many of you took the basic community access monitor training last year. The Mass Office on Disability is offering this advanced training, sort of a next step. We'll be taking it along with members of Cambridge's commission. They are waiving the loose requirement that you take the basic training first. So even if you missed that first one last year, for example, maybe our new members who want to learn more about physical access, the Architectural Access Code and the State Building Code, you are welcome to come. They are building it in such a way that you will be able to follow along even if you did not attend the basic. So that is April, I want to say 12th. I believe Patricia sent an email to you all with the sign-up link last week, but if you did not receive it, she will follow up next week when she is back in the office. So that's Patricia's Architectural Access Report from Andrea tonight.
Thank you, Patricia, or excuse me, thank you, Andrea. We're switching interpreters.
Next on our agenda, announcements. I do not have any further announcements. Does anybody here have announcements on the board? Olivia?
Just a reminder that public housing is up for the housing bond bill, which is coming up. I contributed to a piece in the Globe that was an argument for and against expanding public housing. I'm definitely for. I don't understand folks who are against, because public housing is the safety net for a lot of us, and particularly folks with disabilities. So when that comes up, if you could give a call to your rep and your state rep and your state senator, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Olivia. Does anybody have a follow-up comment or question to Olivia's comment? Are there other announcements? Elizabeth, I see your hand.
Yes, this is Elizabeth. I just want for those of you who take the ride vehicles, the MBTA ride vehicles, you might already be aware that there is a new program called UZURB, UZURB is the company name. It's not another, it's not an alternative to the conventional ride vehicles like Uber and Lyft, where people either belong to the Ride Flex program or independently could be taking those vehicles. But for those people who take conventional ride vehicles, it's a way for them to help with problems with delays in people getting picked up, or as a way to distribute the ridership on a given day better. So it is not at this point an on-demand service that someone could choose to participate in, but it is, there could possibly be a ride reassignment. They're only in the first weeks of its use. The Riders Transportation Access Group, RTAG, the RIDE subcommittee will be meeting next week with the MBTA office that handles the RIDE, and So we'll be hearing more about from their perspective. But for those people in wheelchairs, for instance, they said that they were going to have wheelchair vehicles available. So we're very interested to know what are some of the early statistics of how many people are being reassigned, and how many, just that number in general of reassignments, and are they reassigning some of the wheelchair user rides, particularly when they've at times had double bookings, meaning trips with 2 wheelchairs on board. So if there are updates for next meeting, I'll get back in touch with you. At some point, I think it might be helpful to have a presentation to our group from the RIDE staff, but I think it would be helpful I think before that happens, we'd like to have a little bit more information on how that's running. But I think we've held out, there was a change in leadership over for division running the RIDE, and then you'll remember last year's meltdown of the overall system they were using for tracking routing rides. So there have been a couple of different reasons why we've postponed giving a presentation, or not us, but requesting a presentation to this group. But I did want to both let the board know of this addition, and also that that is something that I'll be in contact with the executive board about at a time that seems good from the board leadership point of view, and where it seems like it's at a juncture where they'll be best able to field your questions, not just on this newest addition, but any questions any board members or anyone from the public might have. So thanks.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Are there other announcements from any of the board members? Do you have anything you'd like to share? Okay, great. Moving on to the next agenda item. Old business. I don't have any old business. There are no items. Is there old business from any of the board members that you would like to discuss this evening?
This is Carl.
Carl, okay.
So if you remember last year, we were talking about how to deal with remote participation for open meetings, because the emergency rules that were put in place by Governor Baker will be removed in March, I believe, or April, saying that all meetings can be remote. There has to be a physical presence. Representative Cabral, C-A-B-R-A-L, has submitted a new bill finally, and it just got assigned a number. And we talked about, once there was a bill, that this committee should write a letter of support. So I think now is the time to consider writing a letter of support, supporting the bill saying that committees can be hybrid so that people with disabilities can attend more meetings.
Thank you, Carl. I'm in favor of that letter of support. Could you please send Andrea the proposed language, the proposed bill, and she can share it with us as a board?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think it would be best that we review the bill and have a discussion in support of writing that letter of support for the legislation that was proposed at the next meeting.
Great.
Elizabeth.
Yes, it's Elizabeth again. I have a question for both. Carl, could you remind us what it looks like the projected time frame for that is? For it moving forward?
So, not anytime soon, I do not think, because the committee just got assigned. I don't know that the bills have been assigned to committee, and we're at the start of a new session, so we have some time.
It's helpful to know. And then this other piece that is old business, this is, well, much older business in one sense, but I did want to find out, Commissioner, what the situation is for, it's been great to see the City Hall Plaza open, and I don't know what was officially considered the opening, or if when we had requested a 1-year post evaluation, what would that date be from? But I know we need to work with with Mayor Wu's office now with change of leadership. That before we had the meeting, was it Marty Walsh? Was it Mayor Walsh? Was it his chief operating officer that we met with?
Yeah, that was Pat Brophy. The official kickoff, or the official opening was in the fall, late fall. I think it was November, because it was chilly out. But yeah, we can definitely think about setting up a time to revisit it. I would want to give it enough time so that, you know, everything settles and you'll be able to see how it holds up. So let's keep that in mind, and maybe we could do it like in the fall. Granted, it hasn't been much of a cold winter, so there probably hasn't been much heaving and thawing, and there hasn't been any snow removal on the plaza. So I don't know if this year will be the biggest test, but we definitely can revisit it in the fall.
Yeah, no, because there are those issues that can vary year to year, but also just to make sure that there weren't issues with some of the other parts put in place, because I did see that at the brick at the third floor level entrance, the accessible entrance, that part of that older brick, not the new brick that was laid down, but that older brick is not in very good shape. There was a woman leaving with a walker, and some of that brick is uneven. Could you tell us if there's information about that, if that will eventually be replaced, or what's?
Yeah, that the City Hall, reimagined City Hall and City Hall Plaza has 4 or 5 different phases. The phase that was just completed with the plaza was phase 2. So the rest of the plaza and other parts of City Hall are like phases 3 and 4. It's all online. We can send you a link. It was all, you know, public meetings and.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I remember that. And as I said, it's great to have access to a level that wasn't accessible before. Yeah. But I just didn't remember that with specificity. But it was more just to keep that on the radar also of the post-evaluation meeting.
Definitely.
Not meeting, evaluation. Thanks.
Sounds good.
I'm going to ask Jerry to go ahead. You have an announcement?
No, this is,
Comment under old business. Forgive me.
correct, yes. I just, when I was looking at the minutes for last month's meeting, I didn't see that we had forwarded over the welcome letter to the new Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, I'm sorry. So I might have missed it. Did we draft a letter and has it been sent over, or is that still in the pipeline, or is that something that we need to revisit?
This is Wes, yes. Andrea sent an email attachment and a welcome letter to the Attorney General and a letter of support for them.
Okay,
so both
great.
letters have been sent.
Yeah.
Andrea,
okay.
can you confirm that for us?
Thanks, Wes. This is Andrea. Yes, the votes were taken at our January meeting to approve them. They went out in the mail, if not that Friday, early that next week.
Great, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Because I know that there was a lot of back and forth around both of those. So. Thank you.
Are there other additional comments, questions regarding old business? New business?
This is Carl.
Go ahead, Carl.
So, based on the success of the caption and ordinance for the city of Boston, I spoke to a few legislators at the State House, and 2 of them have filed a bill to try to make something very similar to the Boston ordinance statewide. Representative Garlick, Denise Garlick, G-A-R-L-I-C-K, had filed it in the House, who is also the chair of the Permanent Status of Persons with Disability Commission, so she's very supportive, and she's pretty powerful in the State House, actually, so that's a good thing. And then we have Senator Michael Barrett, who did it on the Senate side, who filed a very similar bill on the Senate side. And he also has a child who I believe is deaf, or at the very least, significantly hard of hearing.
Twins.
So, what was that?
2 twins. Carl, he has 2 twins.
Got it, thank you. So we have 2 bills for this session that have been filed to try to make televisions and public spaces show captions statewide. So I will send Andrea the bill numbers and the text for both bills, and maybe we could also discuss at next month's meeting whether we want to support those 2 bills.
This is Wes. Paul, are you asking if we would support those bills?
No, I'm saying, this is Carl, I'm saying I will send the text of those 2 bills to Andrea for this advisory board to review, and then they can make a decision.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. We appreciate being kept up to date. Jerry, I see your hand. Did you have another item for old business?
Yes, I do.
Hand is down. I'm confused. What's happening, Jerry?
sorry, what, this is Jerry. Once you called on me, I lowered my hand, Wes, so. But yes, as Andrea mentioned earlier in the meeting, in passing, I just had a brief update to the presentation that we had last month from Dr. Lisa Iazzoni and the study which she headed around the lack of healthcare, the lack of accessibility in healthcare facilities.
Can I, sorry, just to ask you to hold on just for 1 second.
Sure.
That, I think, would be something for under new business. That's the medical discrimination discussion.
Oh, okay, all right, I apologize.
Great, I appreciate that, thank you. So just to confirm, asking again, are there any other items to be discussed under old business? Okay, seeing none, terrific. Now we can move on in our agenda to new business. And we will talk about the medical discrimination. So sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure we were in the right part of our agenda.
Great.
About the presentation from last month. Jerry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you again, Wes, and sorry for jumping ahead. You know, sometimes old business gets mingled in with new business and new business in with old anyway. So thanks for keeping us on track. Well, anyway, Lisa, Dr. Iazzoni had that wonderful presentation, you know, and I'm so glad that she was able to come and speak with us about again, the accessibility or lack thereof in healthcare facilities, and also in doctors' attitudes around disability. And I remember us talking at that time about what can we do? What can we do moving forward? And one suggestion that she made, and I think others on the advisory board made, was to maybe partner or to at least see what BCIL has been doing in that area and where we might partner with them. Towards that end, very shortly after the last month's meeting, I happened to reach out to Bill Henning, Executive Director of BCIL, and he said he thinks the biggest thing that we could do as a board, and I followed up, you know, in an email with all of you, would be to share, you know, both our stories as people with disabilities around access in our healthcare facilities, and, you know, be the eyes and ears of our constituents and try to get stories from other folks with disabilities in our communities and in our networks, if they're comfortable, obviously, sharing. And then we could share those with BCIL, and he's been working very closely with Disability Law Center and meeting, you know, fairly regularly with Medicaid and Mass Health around this issue. So he thinks that would be a great initial step, would be for us to try to gather some stories, because he feels that they're very impactful.
This is Wes. Zeri, did you want to follow up with what Jerry was saying?
Yes. I actually just wanted to say that I think one of the things I would recommend is, first, that as people with disabilities, we should know who our advocates are within each hospital. So there are patient experience, patient advocacy offices, those that actually we could contact directly to give our feedback. Each hospital has safety compliance officers that really care about patient safety. So that's another avenue. So I would say, as an educated patient and an advocate, I always recommend that you find out first who the best contacts are at each hospital. But also working with Bill Henning and other advocacy agencies, and especially with Bill, he's worked with MGH, Brigham and Women, Boston Medical. So he probably has even better reliability. And he probably has some really good contacts that we may not know about. So it might benefit us to maybe consider possibly inviting Bill or organizations that might have had experience working with other hospitals to see what we might be doing. Just like Jerry was mentioning, it might be nice to hear from someone like Bill about some of the suggestions. But that would be my recommendation as someone who works in a hospital.
This is West. Thank you very much, Zeri. Elizabeth, go ahead with your follow-up or comment, please.
Yes, I'm very happy to hear these follow-up steps. As part of people telling their stories, as Lisa, as Dr. Iazzoni had mentioned to our group that she herself was at a Boston hospital and needed to be lifted onto the exam table by her husband, I think was the example she gave. But some people, in addition to the stories they've actually had, I wonder if another way to help people with disabilities think about these issues, if it hasn't come up, is, for instance, for people with mobility issues, the issue of whether a doctor's office has a scale, whether it's a sitting scale or one where the patient is lifted up is another way to get a weight. But a lot of times, people don't have an accurate weight for years on themselves. And from a medical perspective, there are a number of conditions where knowing if someone has a significant weight loss or weight gain is important information. And I think it's not necessarily always on a patient's highest priority, or they're so accustomed to it there isn't an alternative. This can include, by the way, not only in primary care offices, but in specialty offices like gastroenterology, GI clinics, where you're dealing with people who are having issues with their gut, which again could mean weight gain, weight loss. And so I think some people are aware that some patients are aware that if you say ahead, again, this happens to be in the mobility arena, that if you ask ahead, is there a room where the table, there's a lowered table. Often if you haven't booked that ahead, it might not be available to you at the time of your appointment. But I know that this must also be applicable to people with other disabilities, but I guess one consideration for us or in working with people like Dr. Iazzoni, in addition, people have many stories, or there will be examples of those stories of people who couldn't get onto a table. And of course, this also would include people who have issues with dizziness or vertigo. It's not always just mobility issues. There might be some examples of that, but for some people, they basically don't even, or for things like a skin exam, it's not even in their mindset that they really should have a full body check. And most of these dermatology practices just don't have a way to do that if you can't be on their table. So I think that there's, in addition, certainly the stories that are already out there are important to collect and bring attention, or best practices at places where it is being done well. But I wonder if we can create some either questions or categories that might prompt people to think about it. Because they're so, and of course the people with disabilities need all the usual screening that other patients get, but often if people have complex medical needs, I think just even routine screening just gets lost in the shuffle. Thanks.
This is Wes. Just thinking about being a patient with disabilities, access at the doctor's office, the various doctor's offices, and clinics and hospitals that provide patient satisfaction surveys and make those available for their patients as a way to garner feedback about experiences in the hospital setting. I don't know if people with disabilities are usually willing to fill those out to explain their experiences there, if they're facing discrimination. I don't know if, and again, I think most of the time those are phone surveys, which is often not accessible for people with disabilities. I think, you know, is a satisfaction survey enough? Is that a good way to garner the kind of feedback that we're looking for? I guess maybe we should be thinking about taking another step, finding out maybe the point person in each of the hospitals and clinics, or maybe in the state licensing board for the medical facilities, to find out what the process is of filing a a discrimination complaint with them. That might be helpful as well.
Olivia and Jerry, and I do believe after those two comments, we do need to wrap up. Olivia?
Yes, this is Olivia. One of the things that I have personal experience with, I actually had to bring in a lawyer while I was inpatient to get access, was psychiatric care for people with physical disabilities, particularly inpatient care. This system is abhorrent. They don't provide accessible rooms, things like that. I've got a wealth of stories, and I've told them, but I'm sure I'm not alone. I got to know the human resource officer at a Steward hospital very well over these issues.
Thank you, Olivia, for sharing that. And I do apologize that that is happening to you. Jerry? Jerry, do you have a comment?
Yes, I was on mute again. I apologize. Yes, as we've heard from everyone tonight and probably in our networks, these issues are very complex. And another thing that Bill said was that people are often reluctant to share their personal to share their accessibility stories around accessing medical care, because it is such an intimate relationship between the provider and the individual. You know, again, that was just a suggestion from him as a possible next step. You know, I'm sure either he or someone else from BCIL would be willing to come and speak with us more on the issue. You know, I think what Zari said is also a very, you know, good idea about, you know, finding out as many as possible in the healthcare facilities in Boston around who the patient advocacy folks are and the safety officers are. Again, these are just possible next steps. So I'll look to Wes and the board to figure out, how we move forward.
Thank you, Jerry. I know it's almost time for us to wrap up. And it's good to listen to the board's thoughts on those two separate tracks. One to collect the stories from the disability community, and the other track to develop some type of educational material to empower people with disabilities, to find their patient advocates, to file a complaint. I think there are two tracks that we can look at, and thank you both for the feedback and the good conversation. Under new business, we have about 30 minutes. It's almost 7:30. Movie theaters and captioning in movie theaters, advocating for that captioning. With the caption ordinance that was passed in December, I have to admit, I was excited about that, but one disappointment for me. Carl Richardson during the hearing asked the city to make public entertainment venues exempt from the captioning ordinance. I would like to propose movie theaters have captioning. And propose similar legislation in an effort to require the movie theaters to provide open captioning for their movies. Right now, Hawaii and New York City have passed laws. The state of Maryland is in the process of having it approved by the legislative body. AMC, the National Movie Theater chain, already requires their movie theaters to have open caption shows where people all over the US can participate with open caption. There is one in Boston that shows open captioned movies for some of their shows. It's not enough. I'd like to ask the advisory board to really push on a legislative effort that open caption within the city be provided for movie theaters.
This is Carl.
Go ahead, Carl.
So I don't think when we spoke at that meeting, I was saying that movie theaters should be exempt. I was saying that there were already laws in place requiring movie theaters to have the equipment to do closed caption.
No, it was entertainment venues, Carl.
Okay.
Just to clarify, entertainment venues.
Okay, I don't remember it. Okay. But regarding movie theaters, there is only currently one chain of movie theaters in Boston, and that's AMC. There's only two multiple movie theater, South Bay in Dorchester, and the one at Lowe's. The one at Fenway just closed this week, or is going to close very soon. The one at North Station closed last year, because movie theaters are struggling to make money right now. I support
At the
this.
Seaport will also close, I believe.
The Seaport did close.
The Alamo will be taking that over, I believe, and there's another movie theater that will be taken over at North Station.
Okay, all
Not
right.
clear which movie theater company will take on
It's
those
also-
theaters.
It's AMC has looked at purchasing the one at North Station. So it's going, Alamos is a different chain. No, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I'm just trying to, do we also require the IMAX theater at the Museum of Science and the IMAX theater at the aquarium to do that? And if we're gonna look at open captioning, should we also be looking at open audio description for the blind and visually impaired? I don't have a problem with looking at open captions, I'm just trying to understand what we want to do within the scope.
Carl, that's a good question about the scope. I don't have an answer for that.
Can I ask you, you mentioned that
I'm
one of
not
the theaters...
asking all, but a percentage of the shows be accessible and have accessible options.
So, the law right now states, and I understand this is not as good as open caption. The law right now states that all the theaters have to have the equipment to play both captioning, but that means you have to go request it. Often the equipment doesn't work, you gotta wear uncomfortable glasses to put things in your coat cup holders to reflect the captioning, so I understand that's not ideal, but the law requires that every single theater does have the ability to play closed captioning. So if I understand, you want to do open captions, meaning they're on the screen, so that it requires no specialized equipment. And do you want it for all showings or just some of the showings?
I'm asking for theaters to provide open caption for their shows. And the rear window equipment, many do not like that.
I agree.
It is the worst accessible item for the deaf and hard of hearing people to be created.
Agreed. So
we
I looked at-
need to find a way to invite the movie theater companies to provide open caption shows. Many of them are not willing to provide that accommodation.
The Hawaii one, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, on the New York, did they say every single showing or some of the showings? I thought they said some of the showings. Is that correct?
Some, that's correct.
So you
have to look at the bill that was passed. And I
Okay.
forgot the exact percentage, but it needs to be a substantive amount of shows within a time frame during the peak business hours and off-peak hours. I see Elizabeth and Olivia have their hand raised for questions and comments. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Yes, this is my ignorance. Could you clarify what is the difference in a movie theater setting between open and closed captioning, so I can then ask a follow-up question?
Sure, I'm happy to explain that. Closed caption requires that you have the remote, that you enable the captioning and turn it on. Open captioning is subtitles. So it's already scrolling across the screen. It's basically the same thing. It can be confusing, but it's just different. One is enabled, one is automatically there.
This is Carl. The way closed captioning work in the movie theater is that only the person wanting to see the caption see it. If it's closed, meaning they have to have a special device. But open captions means the whole entire audience would see it, and it would be accessible to everyone.
That's what I thought that difference probably was, but I just wanted to be clear versus what the terminology when it's used for a TV program. Because I only had an isolated, there was a series years ago at the National Institutes of Health in Maryland, a series on science, and the movies with science, but they were showing the movies at the time that were mainstream movies, but they touched upon some component of science. And admittedly, they were free. It was a different context. But I think they did wonder, nonetheless, even with it being free on the campus, how many people would show up when it was a given that it was going to have open captioning. And at least for that audience, I think once people got accustomed to it, the people who aren't reading the captions can kind of ignore it, so to speak. And for other people, increasingly, as we find out about more and more people being hard of hearing, I think it could be of benefit to a lot of people, and certainly the IMAX. There's some other excellent examples where people's ability to participate, particularly the IMAX, the very large ones. I don't know, for people who with low vision, if you know the dimensions of that screen and choice of location of seating, if that's a different experience. But I think you're right that there are a lot of experiences that other people are accustomed to having a full range of options that for a number of people are more limited. And I think sequentially, if open captioning, I think that's one important avenue. And then, I don't know, Carl, perhaps you could enlighten me or others that I don't know at live venues, theater productions, to what extent some of them already have audio descriptive captions, or at least obviously that would also be pertinent to movies. But I think the more inclusive things can become over time, the better. Well, that's a little simplistic. I think it is
and
important.
To add to that, one important thing, in Generation Z, they are strong advocates of captioning. Because if you're looking at social media, the videos, they're all preferring to have captions. So I think there's a difference in the generations. We're seeing in Generation Z more acceptance of those captionings. I'd like to turn it over to Olivia.
This is Olivia. As someone who relies on audio description when I watch anything on TV nowadays, And when I go to the movies, you know, when I go to get the headsets, it's a crapshoot as to whether I just wasted 12 to 20 bucks on a movie ticket as to whether I can access the movie if the headset's not working. I would be in favor of also including audio described movies without headsets as being a subset of what's being offered for folks.
This is Wes. Thank you, Olivia. So it seems that the board is pretty strongly in favor of the possibility of taking on this fight more broadly. I will follow up with the commissioner one-on-one to think about how we can proceed and what next steps might look like. Okay, Jerry's saying yes. I see him nodding. Thank you very much. Okay, terrific. All right, so really appreciate everyone's comments, everyone's attention. The next item on our agenda for new business is parenting anti-discrimination legislation and the letter of advocacy that we were considering. I know that there were some emails, HD 266, and 2669. If you haven't had an opportunity to read yet, those materials were sent out. This bill is an act to prevent discrimination against adults with disabilities in families in the juvenile court proceedings that they may be a part of. It's HD 2670 and SD 679. Unfortunately, parents with disabilities are being denied the right to parent their children, especially those with psychiatric or intellectual disabilities. And they are inappropriately losing custody or parenting time at alarming rates due to disability discrimination. So the purpose of this state bill will require courts to determine a parent's disability, whether a disability causes actual harm to a child based on evidence, not on assumption, and to explain in writing if a parent's disability is a negative factor in custody and parenting time decisions, and assess if the harm can be avoided with adaptive equipment or supportive services for the parent. Unfortunately, here in Massachusetts, the federal law is not enough, and that required the U.S. Departments of Justice and Human Services to enter into a settlement agreement with the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families to address this disability discrimination. I have a few sad facts to share. Nearly 1 in 10 children here in the U.S. are at risk of being removed from their home by a child welfare agency simply because their parent has a disability. And while 6.2% of parents in the US have some kind of disability, 18% of children in foster care have a parent with a disability. Stereotypes and biases about military service and mental health disabilities can defer veterans or deter veterans from seeking treatment and lead to errors in custody cases. There are 4.1 million parents with disabilities in the US, and 10% of parents in the US are raising children while living with a disability. Only 20 states have passed legislation to protect disabled parents' rights, and Massachusetts is one of the pending states. The current co-sponsors of this bill are Senators Senator Joan Lovely and Representative Kay Kahn. I believe Kay is a representative from Newton, as well as the Mental Health Legal Advisors Committee. This bill is already supported by the Disability Policy Consortium, Massachusetts Law Reform Institute, Veterans Legal Services, and Deaf Inc., Deaf Incorporated. And I would like to ask the advisory board to join in the ranks of supporting this bill. Jerry, I see your hand.
Thank you, Wes, and thank you for sharing those alarming statistics. And thank you for bringing this issue to our attention. As a parent of a child, you know, it's quite alarming, and I'm glad that you know, I haven't experienced what I see as discrimination in my parenting of a child, but I would wholeheartedly support the legislation. Individually, I know we've talked about supporting legislation in the fairly recent past, though, and for some reason we weren't able to do that. Would that apply in this case to either Andrea or the commissioner? The example I'm thinking of is the John Kelly's group. He asked us to sign on for his legislation as well.
Wes, I'm happy to address if you'd like.
Please.
We did support the legislation. That is a thing that we can support. The thing that we were not able to support is what was called an amicus brief, which is a legal filing in a court of law related to a Supreme Judicial Court case. That's a set of legal activities that we're not, that you all, I should say, are not empowered to do, but advocating for local, state, and federal policies are all right there, right in 8J, ready for you to support if you'd like.
All right, great. Thanks again for clarifying.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. We appreciate that.
You know, I would move that we, write a letter in support of the pending legislation.
This is Wes. Thank you very much, Jerry. Olivia, I see you.
I second that motion.
Thanks, Olivia. Any discussion? Okay, hearing nothing for discussion, I would like to see those in favor of us writing a letter of support. All say aye, please.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Thank you all very, very much. Sincerely grateful. We will write a letter to the 3 co-sponsors of the bill and let them know that the advisory board stands in support of this bill. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me personally because I cannot even imagine. I mean, I'm a parent and a person with disabilities, and I just can't imagine facing that kind of situation. So I think this is important. I'm glad we're doing it. Okay, next on our agenda, just checking the time, we only have 3 minutes left. Well, this is something to think about, I think, for the next board meeting. We would spend some time brainstorming new initiatives. That's what we have as our final item of new business. We will, because we know the captioning ordinance passed in December, I have to say I was absolutely awestruck when Commissioner McCosh remarked that that was the biggest thing the commission has ever accomplished. That got me and probably a lot of you wondering what else we can do. If that is the biggest accomplishment thus far, I think we can certainly do more. And before I discuss the proposed future advocacy efforts, I had thought about talking about the tax credit, but does anybody have other ideas, other insight about future advocacy efforts, future initiatives that we could support as a board? Jerry, and then Olivia after that. Jerry, you are muted.
Geez, that mute button's getting me tonight. It must be late. Anyway, this isn't about that agenda item, and I apologize, Wes. This is about, we need to leave time for public input, and we are right up against it, sir.
This is Wes. Thank you. Olivia, do you have something to add quickly before I ask for public comment? Jerry's right.
Yes, let's look at doing some housing advocacy. Housing's one of the #1 things that keep people in nursing homes around here.
This is Wes. Thank you very much, Olivia. That is acknowledged and heard. Thank you very much. Okay. So something to think about, right? I mean, we have some great ideas already, and I would encourage folks on the board to consider what other ideas or areas you think would be worth our attention in terms of advocacy and initiatives for the next foreseeable future. Okay, now we would like to ask, is there any public comment from those in attendance? Anyone from the public who is not on the board who has any comments or feedback or questions? Amelia, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Maybe I should turn my camera on, if it's going to work. Okay, hello.
Hi there.
My name is Amelia. I am 17 years old. I'm a high school student, and I am physically disabled. And I was just wondering if the board would be willing to support or take action to an idea that I had, especially as a student. I feel like there's the reason that there's sort of like a stigma around disabilities is because students aren't taught at all about people with disabilities. They're not educated on the different kinds of disabilities and how to handle them in social situations. So I think perhaps implementing some sort of curriculum in Boston Public Schools, like wellness program or something like that, might be helpful for young kids who are, growing up and trying to learn about the world, to know that there's more than just able-bodied people in the world, and ensuring that we feel included. I think a lot of students who have special needs maybe they don't learn about themselves in wellness programs. They just learn about like nutrition and the physical activities, which is important, definitely, but also knowing that there are different people in the world that need to be heard and seen is just as important, I think. So I think if I had everyone's sort of support, I think it would be wonderful if the board could sort of implement a curriculum for kids with disabilities from people with disabilities, so that we sort of support and uphold diversity, equity, inclusion, not just at this federal level, but also at the educational level, making sure that students are aware of different kinds of people at a young age. So yeah, I was just thinking about that and sort of if this commission could do anything about that.
This is Wes. Thank you very much, Amelia. I think that is a fantastic idea. I guess we would have to ask the commissioner to see if there would be some kind of education, promotional, potentially video that could be created by the commission. That might be helpful, something that we could share.
Hey, Amelia, this is Kristen Acosta, Disability Commissioner. So I'd like to follow up with you offline. I know that some local advocates did a lot of work a few years ago to implement a disability curriculum in the schools. I believe it was a state law. I'm not sure if you know about it, Carl, or anybody else knows about it, but there definitely was a lot of work done on disability curriculum for the schools. I'm not sure if that's exactly where you're getting at, but certainly we'd love to work with you offline. I love your enthusiasm, and yeah, we welcome all your ideas, and we can see what we can do.
Sorry if it's all right, if I can just chime in. Thank you so much. Yeah, I can give you my email in chat, but yeah, I was sort of thinking about what Wes was saying, this idea of a promotional video, but also I was looking at the wellness curriculums at different grade levels, and I saw that there wasn't anything about like diversity, equity, inclusion, especially in the disability sector. There isn't really much going on there. So just maybe putting in something that is even diversity, equity, inclusion related, especially like pertaining to people with disabilities, would be helpful. Just like a week or two where at every grade level where people are encouraged to talk about these the different types of people in the world, so that it isn't so stigmatized at such a young age. So yeah, it could be a promotional video, but just making sure that that like conversation is encouraged at every single grade level, I think will help students, and then, being adults, understand that it's okay to talk about things that you may think are like uncomfortable, but they're really not, and just making sure that we are inclusive of everyone in society. So yeah, I'll send you an email, but yeah, thank you so much for listening to my idea.
Thank you, Amelia. I think it's a great idea. And I remember when I was in high school, someone came and gave a presentation. They were the coordinator, and it was with deaf and hard of hearing classmates. And I remember the presentation, just seeing other disability students in the mainstream setting and experiencing that. I think it's great. Amelia, thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to ask, is there other public input for this evening? I guess this is it. My daughter's here. She knows it's time. It's time to switch the computer off. So I'd like to close the meeting and adjourn.
I second.
Who would like to make a motion?
This is Carl. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
This is Jerry, I second it.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. The meeting is adjourned at 7:37. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, stay safe, everybody. Bye.